Hey, what's up, everybody? It's been a couple days since I've done a screencast, so I thought we'd kind of wrap up Parasites together, just make sure we have some key points under our belt. They had asked me initially when all of this started to kind of do a screencast or a Google Hangout every day, and because of internet issues and because we're just going through the motions of taking notes, I strayed away from that, and that's probably what I'll do as our furlough from school continues. I'll just check in with you all every couple of days and hit some highlights and some key points, and then we'll kind of circle back and move on from there. I do want to talk parasites and a couple of housekeeping things. First, thank you all for those that are on top of your game when it comes to the work for my class. You're making my life much easier. And kudos to Vet Science as a whole. You all are at about 88% every day for turn in as a percentage of all students. Some of you all kind of got lazy on me the end of last week, the beginning of this week, but you really kicked it in the butt and kicked it up quite a bit. So I appreciate you all staying on top of the work. Again, it really helps me out. This morning, I just want to run through a few key things on parasites, and then I'll have a review document posted, some questions for you to answer. So, endoparasites, remember, those are internal parasites, and when we need to do a sampling or a collection on our pets, we are going to use that tool called a fecal loop. So here in the picture, they're providing a lubricating jelly, which allows us to painlessly insert that into the rectum of our patient. Then we will actually take the fecal sample that is scooped out in the eyelet of that fecal loop, and we will deposit it into this tool called a fecalizer. In livestock, we might not have a fecal sample waiting in the rectum, so we might have to utilize one that we collect. And once we have a collected sample, we can also use the end of this fecalizer to see what is in that sample. So let's take a look here how it works.
You'll need a few items to do this procedure. First would be a fecalizer, which has the clear plastic solution container and then the green vial. Second would be your fecal flotation solution. For this video, we're going to be using zinc sulfate, but sodium sulfate is also an acceptable solution to use as well. And lastly, a glass slide and a cover slip. The first step is to remove the green vial from your clear plastic solution container. You'll take your green vial and stamp it into the feces so that there's enough to coat the bottom of the tube. Next, you'll place your green vial into the clear plastic solution tube. You'll take your fecal flotation solution and fill it up halfway.
So we could see this is likely a goat or a sheep manure sample.
Next, you'll take the green vial and twist it several times to try and loosen the feces up so that the ova will disassociate from the fecal patty. Next, you'll take your fecal solution again and continue to slowly fill up your green vial until you've made a meniscus. Lastly, you'll take your cover slip, place it on top of the meniscus, and wait 15 to 20 minutes. After 15 to 20 minutes of time has elapsed, you'll remove the cover slide and place it onto your glass slide.
So in that time, the ova, the eggs from the parasites, would float to the cover slip itself, and they're stuck on there because of that saline solution or sulfuric solution. And then we put them on the slide, And then we would put them under the microscope, and voila, we might see some eggs. So anyone know what those eggs are? Yep, roundworm. All right. Up next, we've got some treatment options for parasites. One term I want you to know is this term of anthelmintic. Anthelmintic. Anthelmintic is defined as a medicine to destroy parasitic worms, livestock. We have lots of anthelmintics that we use. Some people have their go-tos. Other people have ones that they just use because they're on a regiment. It's always good to kind of mix up the anthelmintics that you use. So in livestock, we might use Ivomec or ivermectin. It's the same anthelmintic. And then we might use Safeguard, or we might use Cydectin, or we might use Valbazin. For our dog, we'll want to use a Heart Guard, and then we can use maybe there's a dewormer for dogs that's escaping me now, that targets primarily tapeworms. So if we mix up these anthelmintics that we're using, hopefully we're targeting and preventing worm infestations and parasite suppression. One thing that I want to share with you, because as you get into the industry of veterinary medicine, there is a term that is used to refer to one thing that means something completely different. So a lot of farmers will say, yep, got to go worm my calves. Well, if they're worming them, they're actually implanting parasites. And this is actually a common practice. In the human species, people who are obese might actually get wormed with a tapeworm. And that segment of tapeworm is going to, it's going to consume some blood, but it's also going to consume some of their food. So it is a weight loss method that some people use. You don't want to worm animals. We want to deworm them. So you can shame me as much as you want. I don't care. But one of my pet peeves is when people say, I'm going to go worm my animals. No, you're going to go deworm your animals. Let's hope you're not worming them. But anyway, so we sound as educated as possible. Please try and say deworm. Ectoparasites are those ones that are the external. And we are going to, for the parasites, we covered those ectoparasites. It's all about physical assessment. What is visible on that patient for those parasites? Mites, we've got the Otodectes, and this is the most common that we're going to see. When we have a dog, when we have a cat that we think might have a mite issue, they're going to do a lot of scratching at their ear. They're going to shake their head a lot. And that doesn't always mean there's mites, but it's a pretty good indicator. How we can tell: if we have a white cloth or a good, strong, firm white paper towel. We don't want to use cheap garbage, and we don't want to use a napkin that's going to disintegrate when we get it wet. But if we have a good, strong white paper towel or white cloth, we can drape that over our finger and then get that cloth wet with some alcohol, and we can swab the inner ear. The alcohol acts as a solvent. It removes any of the droppings that the mites might leave behind, and then they will become visible on that cloth. We can actually then take some of those droppings and we could put them on a slide and look under a microscope and see if our suspicions are correct, if there's actually a mite issue. Our demodectic and our sarcoptic mites, they're going to cause mange. Lots of itching, lots of scratching, hair loss, and it'll eventually turn into those calluses that we saw on our introductory slides. Let's take a look at some Otodectes this morning here. Maybe. So this is a really bad infestation in a rabbit. In rabbits, because their ears are so tall and they're like a funnel, they are really susceptible to mites. But we get in here microscopically, you can see the mite population, you can see the flaking of the skin, and it's bad. This poor little rabbit just needs some help. One of the things we need to do is physically remove the eggs and the larva. So it is so significant that they have just created this um, just this ball of larvae right there. So we get that out, but you can see how many are underneath there. Bad news. Anyway, ticks, number 2. We have, they are a very seasonal parasite, especially in Kentucky. It gets cold enough that it kind of suppresses them from being out. But this time of year, we start to see those populations ramp up. When we want to evaluate a patient for ticks is going to be primarily during the summer. And if you are a pet owner, whether it be a dog or a cat that's indoors and outdoors, you're going to want to make sure that you are assessing them every day, especially if they've been outside laying in a grassy area. In the notes, when we went through them, we saw that these tick populations are primarily concentrated in New England in the Northeast and the Great Lakes region, and that's because it's cool and it's damp. When we get out to like Montana, Wyoming, it's cool, but it's not really damp enough to have the populations that we would other places. And there are ticks in those places. They're just not as common. We have ticks here in Kentucky, but it gets so hot in the summer that they just don't want to be around with the same suppression that they are in the Northeast. So when we hear about Lyme disease, when we hear about some of those bad ticks like the deer tick, the black-legged, the Lone Star, they are all over New England. They are all over the Great Lakes. And if you travel there during the summertime, hopefully we can travel there this summer. I'm saying that from a standpoint of no longer being isolated, fingers crossed, right? But if you travel there, you've got to be just vigilant about checking yourself for ticks because they are rampant. When it comes to tick removal, like we said, we want to use caution when removing them. Ticks will regenerate their body. So if the tick is lodged beneath the skin and you pull, you might remove the legs, you might remove the body segment, you may not have the head. So you always want to make sure you have the head out. This picture here, this black-legged tick is just buried in the skin. There's some swelling there, and it would be hard to use forceps to get his head out anyway. So we've got this tick removal tool at your own leisure. Go ahead and look that up. It's pretty cool. You actually burrow under the body of the tick and you twist and it pulls the whole head out. Lots of people think take those ticks and burn them in gasoline or put them in nail polish remover, and you can do that. It's going to kill them, but it's actually best to put them in a Ziploc bag for about a week. And if you had this tick on you and it was actually latched on, or your dog did, to make sure that there's no worry of Lyme disease, you have evidence of the tick. So good to hang on to them for a little while. If it was just crawling on you and you don't think it was latched on anywhere, by all means, take a cigarette lighter and scorch it, get rid of the thing, put it in gasoline, kill it. But if it was latched on, even if it was a brown tick, you probably want to hang on to it just to make sure, because they are vectors for lots of bacteria. Fleas. So fleas, we're going to physically evaluate. The easiest way to do so is with a flea comb. A flea comb has tines in it that are extremely close together. The separation is about the diameter of 1 to 2 pieces of hair. Major indicator that a patient has fleas is they scratch. When we use this flea comb, the fleas cannot fit between the tines and they're actually lifted out, and then we can confirm that we have fleas. Fleas are a very particular looking external parasite. They've got this little seed-shaped body, and then they've got these spring-like, cricket-like legs. So very easy to separate them out from our other external parasites. And they move fast, and they jump. So if you see these jumping brown little things, it's probably fleas. Flea and tick treatment. If we've got fleas, what we're going to do, apply Frontline, which is a topical for both cats and dogs. They do make other topicals. Frontline has a patent on a special combination of surfactant, which is like a sticker or a binder to the hair, as well as their anthelmintic. And then we've got ingestibles. So if that you don't want, if your cat's a big groomer, or if that it's really bad, we can then use an ingestible and orally give NexGard for dogs or Capstar for cats. A little more expensive, but if that dog, like let's say you're training it to be a water retriever for fowl, Frontline is going to get washed off pretty quickly, especially if that we're working on a daily basis or a few times a week in a pond, or if we've got a dedicated pool for the dog. So giving them the chewable is extremely effective, and we know it's in their system. Lice. I put lice into our notes because we see it a lot in livestock, especially coming out of this time of year, going into the colder months, December, January, February, parts of March. Cattle will start to rub when they have lice, and it spreads very, very fast. It's a contact parasite. So they'll itch, they'll rub, and they'll itch so much that they'll get bare spots. The best resolution for livestock is going to be permethrin, which is a louse treatment. It's a dust. Big thing to watch with this stuff is that you don't inhale it. It's a powder, and it's not good for your body. So just be aware of that. Make sure you're downwind if that you're applying it. Okay. Guys, those are the main things I wanted to go over this morning with you. I'm going to post up kind of a wrap up on parasites. Just answer those questions, share them with me, and that will be the bigger grade for this week. And then I'll give you a grade on your Kahoot and your other stuff as a whole. So anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And as always, know that I'm thinking a lot about you all, and I hope that this time away from school is all right. I know it's tough kind of being locked in to your home and very limited contact with people, but you all are doing the right thing by doing that. So anyway, we will talk again very soon. See you all on Monday. Have a great weekend.